Final Fantasy XIII is the worst game I have ever loved. This game is like croutons on a salad. It physically hurts to chew, but damn, let me get some more of them. 13 is chronically narrow. The amount of times, especially in the early game, where you go down a pretty hallway and fight the same assortment of enemies is unacceptable. Not to mention, there are remarkably few towns to stop in compared to other Final Fantasies. It feels like you never really arrive anywhere. The plot might be good, the characters certainly act like the stakes are high, and there are moments of genuine humanity that do stand out, but you may never know that because the game opens with so many fantasy SAT words. Fal'Cie, Pulse, Pulseless Sea, Seath, The Purge. The opening act is 20 pounds of excitement in a 10-pound bag, and while this is thrilling, it also kind of fails to set up its narrative foundation, or at least it did for me. And yet, Final Fantasy XIII is one of my favorite games, maybe ever. And sure, some of this is nostalgia from high school when I first played, let's be clear, but also the soundtrack is this enchanting assortment that perfectly complements the cast. If you listen closely, you start to realize that each character has a key instrument that highlights their time on screen. Vanille's is a subtle, dreamlike piano.
It's only water.
Saz has splashy drums. Lightning has a triumphant violin. Hope's is a gentle guitar, whereas Snow's is a full-blown electric guitar, which outlines their ironic similarities. And the environments, oh my goodness, so many places in this game are cloaked in that style, you know the one. I'm told that it's called Gen X Soft Club aesthetic. Very urban, very cool colors, very minimalist, very futuristic in a way that never really came to be. Tie all of that in with a battle system that, while repetitive, did shine for me in moments, and an ending that, I mean, for God's sakes, they brought in Leona Lewis to do the final song. How could I not cry? Also, they filmed a commercial with Leona Lewis where she's very clearly not actually playing the game. Final Fantasy XIII is a game that I know, my brain screams, is not a good game. And yet, I'm strangely obsessed with it. Bet money you have a game just like this. Bet money there's a game that you've played that you know logically sucks, and yet it's a guilty pleasure. How does this happen? How do we arrive at this level of strange dissonance? And the obvious answer is, of course, that we like the things we like about it enough to disregard the things we don't. And I was at peace with that answer. God, I was at so much peace. Until recently, I was streaming, and this topic came up. Do y'all believe in... I'm glad you said that, MK. Do y'all believe in games being objectively good or objectively bad? Or is that just a bunch of hogwash? And the discussion that we had in chat that day ruined my life and informed this video. In the process of trying to come up with an answer, I turned to you. I asked folks on Patreon, hey, what is a game that you know in your heart of hearts is not a good game, but you absolutely love it anyway? And the sheer amount of people that responded was not only telling, but also the amount of times the word objectively got tossed around, I felt was significant. Especially since nowhere in my prompt did I use that word. Perhaps you've pushed up your glasses and proclaimed that you cannot use that word correctly unless it's a fact, like, objectively, there was a Kingdom Hearts 4 teaser this summer. Subjectively, it was a Nothing Burger trailer. And I agree with that. The trailer being a nothing burger, it was clearly just Nintendo being like, hey, we're gonna have that too. But I also agree that by definition, objectively really does not belong in this discussion, no matter what I may rage bait you with in the title of this video. But today, I want to discuss that temptation to use the word objectively here because, well, it's like the old saying about wisdom. Knowledge is knowing that a tomato is a fruit. Wisdom is not putting it in a fruit salad. Knowledge is knowing that Skyrim is a better game than Oh Dear, but wisdom is knowing that you're much more likely to actually play Oh Dear this weekend. How is it that we can hate something we admit is good and love something that we admit is bad? So grab a snack, get cozy, and while you do that, I'll quickly tell you about today's sponsor, and then we'll dive right in. Have you, my friend, ever tasted the exquisite joy of overcoming a genuine challenge in a game before? Finally nailing that combo when it mattered most, finally beating that viciously difficult boss, landing that final perfect in your favorite song. Games have the unique ability to push us to greatness in small doses, and I believe that the same is true of Boot.Dev. You see, Boot uses modern game design to teach you how to code. You'll pick up Python like a new character, and through courses that are strategically designed to keep you from getting bored while consistently adding a healthy amount of heat, Boot.Dev will teach you coding from the ground up. From the most basic of concepts all the way up to building real projects and writing real scripts like you do on a real job. Heck, they even have a course on finding work and starting a career in this field. But that's thinking big. First, you start small. Your first lesson can be taken with a free trial, plus later lessons can be viewed in guest mode. Over the course of your time with Boot, you'll earn XP, levels, achievements, complete quests, fight bosses. They are committed to making your learning feel just like progressing in a game, and, as you likely already know, this is a wonderful way to trick yourself into pushing your limits. They have this new feature called the Training Ground as well. It gives you personalized challenges to help you fully understand anything you're struggling with before you move on, just like learning a boss or learning a combo. But you don't have to do it alone. There is a Boot Discord community to keep you grounded if you ever need another set of eyes or tips. So if you'd like to pursue greatness once again, try something new, and maybe even discover your future career, be sure to go to Boot.Dev and use my code DarylTalksGames at checkout for 25% off your entire first year. Link in the description, QR code on screen, all the potential in the world staring back at you in the mirror. A massive thanks to Boot for the sponsor. Now, let's get back to the show. Have you ever heard of the game Coconut Simulator? For some pocket lint and an old gum wrapper, you can simulate what it's like to be a coconut. But because coconuts don't do much besides this, there really are no controls or objectives in this game. You can move the camera around and observe both the scenery and your score slowly rise as you successfully continue to be a coconut, but that is the entire experience. Would you call this a good game? And I think your answer says a lot about you. When this topic first came up on stream, I made the point that the way I rate games is how well I feel the game accomplishes what it intended to do. I define it by what it's trying to do. Is that a bad game? Because, it doesn't have a lot of features, but that's the point. It achieves its objectives perfectly. To me, this is the universal good or bad measure. If the goal is to be a sweeping dramatic adventure with a deep reflection on what it is to be human in the face of mortality, then yes, Dark Souls, Expedition 33, Final Fantasy X, oh dear, these games accomplish this, and they do so with flying colors. It's why I rate them highly. But when I play a game like Detention that is trying to weave Taoism and Buddhism with a narrative on adolescence all under a spooky umbrella, but then it takes me out of the story it's trying to tell because I find the interactions with the monsters clunky and frustrating, I have to shave some points off. To me, it's less about the pieces individually and more so, do they all come together elegantly to give me the experience the developers intend? And the nice thing about this evaluation method is, it gets around things that some might consider bad game design. Like, Silent Hill 2 has those awkward-ass controls and terrible camera, but to me, that helped tell the story. James is not a Hollywood blockbuster badass, he's a traumatized 30-something with no training wandering around a haunted town. I should feel very vulnerable playing as him. Combat should be stressful, making those clunky controls fit the narrative beautifully. So, you could say by my current rubric, Coconut Simulator is a fantastic game because while not having controls is probably bad game design, it's good game design if the point is you don't have controls. In fact, if you swap out of arcade mode into realistic mode, it might be a perfect game because, wouldn't you know it, coconuts don't have eyes or ears. Here is what a coconut really experiences. Game of the Year. Let me be clear, the objectively good argument has always pissed me off, and one reason I adopted this method is because it seems to tear apart that stance at every turn. You always have to look at design choices in context. Even if someone makes the case, yeah, but objectively, slow movement speed is bad and will only annoy players. What about if the game is punishing you for carrying too much, forcing you into an interesting decision? What if the game wants you to start slow at the start to teach you that you can dodge without spamming dash? What if narratively it's there to make you feel weak and desperately close to your demise? The same thing goes for movies. Good, clean lighting is generally considered good cinematography. Unless it's a horror flick, then less is more to really cloak the threat and weaponize that ambiguity. Clean audio is objectively the right thing to use, unless an explosion just happened. A tomato is a great ingredient, unless you're making a fruit salad. There is always an exception. And let me tell you, I would love to put this video to bed here. I really, really would. I thought that this was an elegant solution. But unfortunately, here's where my argument crumbles like my favorite teams in the postseason. Yes, every artistic choice does vary depending on context. But if that's true, we could hypothetically draw up a super complex chart, right? We could literally define when certain techniques are best used and avoided. Screen shake and pulsing music is good when hitting or getting hit, not so much in the middle of dialogue. Ammo is best placed right before a boss and not before a really calm section when you don't need it. Glitches are bad, unless fourth wall breaking horror. And if you are in school to make games or movies or food, this is exactly what you are learning. There are literally grading rubrics out there that damn sure believe there is an objectively correct way to craft these things, and maybe this is the standard that some of us have rooted deep within our DNA from years and years of playing and analyzing. Maybe this is what people are collectively referring to when they critique games, and maybe that is what you feel when you slowly accept that one of your favorite games is kind of ass. So perhaps there is some level of correct versus incorrect in play, and if there is, the colloquial objectively bad may have some ground, and my method of rating games is flawed. I mean, look, you don't get to just decide what the devs intended when you finish the game. You can't retroactively go back and justify certain decisions as, oh yeah, they meant to do that. There is a massive hypocrisy there, and I'm guilty of it, I realize, as I type this fucking script. I literally critiqued Detention for the same thing I praised Silent Hill for. You can go back and rewatch it from a moment ago. Hell, you might have already left an angry comment. That's okay, leave it, it helps the analytics. But now, suddenly, we might have our answer. Sounds like there is a true good and bad if we are to subscribe to this chart of when certain decisions in design are appropriate. This explains why you can like a game that you know is bad, because there kind of is a definition of bad to work with. And it's at this point of me writing the script and also having this discussion on stream that I can see the exit ramp and the final conclusion. After all that, our opinions don't really fucking matter. Hey baby, it doesn't matter if a game fits the mold of good. If you like it, that's all that matters. No definitions can tarnish what you yourself get out of it. Fuck what society says. Sakurai 316.
その人が良いと思ったものがナンバーワンです。
And that is a comforting notion. Thank goodness I can finally wrap up this goofy-ass discussion.
Oh my God!
Am I the only one that when they showed this trailer thought, yep, this is probably going to be a very good game, maybe even great. Yet, I could not possibly be less interested. And maybe that's just Marvel burnout, right? Like, Marvel is like cheese now, they just put it on everything, but it's not just that. How many game trailers have you seen over the summer and just yawned? Not because it didn't look good, but because you've seen it before. Take it a step further. How many times have you played a game that you had absolutely zero problems with? A game that by all accounts was very damn good. Polished, clean, fun, balanced, and yet, again, it just didn't do it for you as much as you thought that it would. This is probably a weirder phenomenon than liking something bad, because even if you can quantify what it is about the bad thing you do like and ignore what you don't, when you stumble across something that you can readily admit is a masterpiece and in the same breath say, I didn't care for it, that is strange. Maybe you have a game or a show like this. Maybe you have no clue what I'm talking about. Someone on stream said that they didn't care for Dune despite fully knowing it was brilliant, and yet loved the Minecraft movie despite knowing it was garbage. Humans are very odd. How on earth does this happen? How on earth does the new 007 game have less favorable reviews on Steam than Coconut Simulator? And I think that stupid, Objective truth right there is what this discussion is really about. Is there a correct way to make games and films and literature and food? Of course there is, we all understand that. But correct isn't always what's most thrilling or captivating. Coconut Simulator took a risk. It shouldn't work by every definition. Games should have controls unless you're controlling a coconut, which makes it hilarious and memorable. And obviously this is a gag game and these reviews likely reflect how funny people think it is, so it's really not a fair comparison to 007. But my point is simply that there is an exception to every rule because at some point someone made something that demanded an exception be considered. Glitches were a bad thing until horror came along and made us all realize that it could be used as a narrative tool. Combat in a 3D space was not advisable until Ocarina of Time perfected the Z targeting system. Using a mouse to control a sledgehammer was not a good idea for a climbing game until it was. Social deduction simply was not a genre until Among Us came along. Historically, the games that are most remembered are the ones that revolutionized in some way, games that decided to break a rule and challenge what we all thought was correct. And this is why I think some of us see a game like Wolverine and shrug. We know it'll be great, we know it'll have gruesome combat and edgy dialogue and have the best graphics available, we know it'll follow the rules. But will it take a creative risk? Will it morph what our current understanding of correct is and blow us away with something we've never seen before? When I was reading through the responses on Patreon, I noticed that the things people loved about the stereotypically bad games that they mentioned were typically that each title offered something unique. David here admits that Alpha Protocol does have massive flaws, but the genuine impact of your decisions when you play is fantastic. Sharky says that Oddworld is an extremely weird game, but they still love it because of how outlandish the mechanics are. Nishimiya and I agree that Nier Replicant is a tedious, slow, frustrating game to actually play at times, and often hard to recommend, but the way that it systematically breaks your heart through a language barrier and recontextualizes all of your actions on a second playthrough is something that you can only find there. The amount of people that know Sonic Adventure sucks, but can't ignore how it is simply dripping with attitude was duly noted. And you know, I read a lot of frustrations about gacha games as well, actually, the consensus being that despite how one, yes, the gacha system is what it is and generally considered a corporate, greedy, and infuriating practice, and two, these games often get labeled as gooner games, some folks do not care. The stories are often quite good, sometimes so good that people sob at the closure they get when crossovers happen. The gameplay is fun to many, and the bonus content that is consistently added, not just in new characters and crossovers, but also things like music videos of the characters and fucking short films being published to socials just to embellish the world and make it feel more alive, is amazing. Can you imagine, just for a second, if Square did things like this for Final Fantasy, or if Nintendo posted an animation of Link and Zelda dancing like this? Like, really take yourself through how the internet would melt to see a canonical animation like this. Are these bad games? Maybe. But when developers and publishers support the worlds they've built like this and try to do things that will really surprise us, it goes to show that what we respond to as people, I think, is less when games follow the rules and more so when they simply go for it. When the writers and developers just swing for the fences, conventional knowledge be damned. I would rather a game be brave, not correct. Because correct is, in at least one way, subjective. Correct is an old, rotting mural that steadily morphs as artists carve their own exceptions into it over the years. And to me, that is what innovation is. That is why we really need objectively bad games, and that is subjectively pretty damn cool. Hey everyone, thanks so much for watching, and again, thanks for allowing me a chance to make something smaller and more digestible. I promise the longer, more emotionally driven deep dives will return. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more like it, give that subscribe button a click and let me know down below what the worst game you've ever loved is. If you want to support the show and join me over on Patreon, you not only get your name in the credits like you see here, but you might get your own creative input used in a video like you saw earlier. You'll also get weekly updates, bonus behind the scenes streams, and more for only $1 a month. You may even get a shout out like this month's featured patrons. Studio Cabalito, Spaghetti Coder, Meraki, Rip Cardo, Bads, Julius Farrow, Bad Time, and Randomium. Thanks again, my friends. Take care and have yourself a damn good one. Like, can most people tell a lot of effort went into it? Is it generally agreed upon? But see, now we're talking about how people define it, right? Like, is it good because people define it as good, or is it good because it is good before people even touch it? See, now I'm really starting to piss myself off. Like, right now, I'm about to get in a fight with Daryl.